I'm Jessica Marinos, the author of Traven's Past. Welcome to Word Crafting Part 2. In Part 1, we established that writers use tools to help us bring clarity and power into our stories. Strong words was the first writing tool that we've covered. In this session, we are going to cover the tools of using similes, metaphors, and personification. All of these tools are some of my personal favorites. They are, for me, what makes writing fun because they extract creativity. They will enable you to take a basic sentence like "it rained" and explode it into a sentence such as "like bullets of war, the rain sabotaged my prize-winning flower garden." So see, these tools bring writing personality and punch. Let's begin with similes because that is the tool that was incorporated in that last sentence. Now, a simile will begin with not necessarily a sentence that has a simile, but the simile itself only begins with two words. It will begin with either as or like. So those are big warning signs, and not always when you see as or like that indicates a simile, but a simile will always start with either one of those words. And a simile can start in any point in the sentence, the beginning, middle, or the end. And the point of a simile, or how they're used, is if you have an idea in your mind, to really make that clear to your reader, you can compare it to a common idea that they can easily grasp. So when it's compared, your idea with common, they can instantly grasp what you're trying to convey. So an example of that from my book, Traven's Past, this is a simile that uses the word like in its comparison. As I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me, the change of the atmosphere was instant, like stepping from the roaring waterfall to an underground trickle. So we're comparing how she's moving from a busy place to a quiet room. This to how loud a waterfall would be to an underground trickle. So then you can really picture that difference in the atmosphere that she's experiencing. And here's another one where the simile uses the word as. So tossing her flounces aside as one would a pearless clam, I walked past her. Metaphors are very similar to similes in that they serve the same purpose and the same role, they're just presented a little bit different. So as with a simile, you always use like or as. Metaphors, no such words. They just directly say it. So here's an example from Traven's Past. Lydia, always a tightly closed bloom, had blossomed in his hand. So instead of saying Lydia like a tightly closed bloom, it just says it. Lydia, a tightly closed bloom. So it's a little more of a direct approach in comparing two ideas. The Bible uses metaphors all the time, like saying God, our strong tower, God, our refuge and our strength. So that's a metaphor. Have fun. Now let's talk about my favorite, personification. And it's simply just taking an object and giving it human personality and traits. And personification is usually used in like one word, little splashes here and there throughout your writing. So here's an example from my book, Traven's Past. By morning, the rain had exhausted to a drizzle and the wind tired to no more than a roaming whimper. So just here you use personification by using the word exhausted to refer to the rain and tired to refer to the wind. And also it helps as my character Galen at this point is also very exhausted and tired. Another place, an example of personification is in these two sentences. There was no morning light, fog crippled its rays. So I just love personifying fog as being able to cripple something. Makes it very clear and just unique. And the last one I have here, though I have many more throughout my book. The wind tried to nudge a response from me, checking if I were dead or living. So the idea that wind can nudge something, I just love it. So yeah, have fun with personification. splash it in your writing here and there. So that's a brief explanation of those 3 fun tools. But just to clinch some clarity on that, what I want to do is take one sentence and then rewrite it, incorporating each of those tools with it. So let's start with the basic sentence. 2 latches held the book closed. So now let's read that sentence as a simile, if we incorporated a simile in there, which is how I chose to write it in my book. So then that sentence would be changed into 2 latches like protected fingers guarded the treasured pages. So as you see, remember that the simile starts with a like or an as. All right, so then let's write that sentence using a metaphor, which is basically the same thing, just omitting those words like and as. All right, so here's the metaphor. The 2 latches were protective fingers guarding the treasured pages. And then let's see how this sentence could work using personification. 2 latches guarded and held tight their treasured pages. So that's a sentence and all the different tools. You can do the same exercise. It's very fun. So you can just grasp and understand how each of the tools works. Make the tools work for you. Now that we have defined similes, metaphors, and personification, I wanted to add some guidelines so you know when to use them. Firstly, when you want to create atmosphere for your setting. Second, to draw out strong emotion from your characters. Third, when you want to avoid using cliches. And fourth, when you want to bring some variety to your sentence structures. Now, I don't want to put too many limitations on how you use these writing tools, because how you choose to use them is what is going to create your unique and special writing voice. But do be careful how you use metaphors, similes, and personification. They can be turned into something awkward that creates jarring into your writing. Your goal in your writing is to so know your characters and stories that you use these tools to best portray their feelings, the setting of your story, your description. So you don't want to use these tools simply to say something in a different way. You want to use these tools to best, make your story flow, make the feeling of your characters clear so people can vividly see your setting. So it's just to bring a more realistic picture, not just come up with a different way of saying something. So that is the end of word crafting part 2. I have decided to do word crafting part 3, so that's coming up next. And in that, we will cover the tools of cadence and sentence variation. Farewell.